I'm going to be first calling up on stage our moderator for the session. She's a seasoned PR and communication specialist with over 2 decades of delivering measurable impact through strategic communication functions at JLL India, Monsanto and Godrej Properties Limited. An ex-journalist having worked with key Tier 1 publications in Delhi and Mumbai. She brings content creation expertise and extensive stakeholder networks. The one and only, give it up for Ms. Arundhati Bakshi Dighe, Head PR and Communication India, JLL. Thank you so much. May I please request you to sit over there at the corner? Yeah, thank you. My next speaker over here is a communication specialist and consultant with over 20 years of experience across media relations, corporate reputation, crisis communication, consumer and brand marketing. He works as a senior vice president at Adfactors PR and consults India Inc. on reputation management. He has been consulting leading real estate brands such as Rustomji, Mahindra Life Spaces, Kolte Patel, and many others. Please give a big round of applause for Mr. Hardik Desai. Thank you. And my next guest over here is a communication specialist with experience spanning across BFSI, aerospace, manufacturing, IT, technology, food, e-commerce, travel, and policy. You see it all, you name it out, you have it all over here. He brings a proven ability to plan and implement complex communications and public relations campaigns that are in sync with the company's market realities. Please give a big round of applause for Mr. Suhas, Tadas, Senior Vice President, Corporate Concept PR. And I must say that I keep working with Concept PR when it comes to interviews and events and stuff. They've got a great team. So kudos to you, Mr. Suhas, for that. And so I'll request all of you to please kindly take it forward from there. The timer is right in front of you, ma'am. And yeah, there and also there. Are we waiting for one more? Yeah. Okay. So I don't see the thing over here. Yeah. My next speaker over here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry. This was an error in the page setup. She's a leader who truly embodies purpose, agility, and trust. With a sharp, strategic mindset and a deeply human approach to communication, she has consistently built partnerships that have stood against the test of time. Please give it up for Angela Minocha, who's the managing partner at Marque Solutions. Thank you so much. Now this completes the panel, I truly believe, right? Completed is. Can I have a bigger round of applause for this panel, ladies and gentlemen, to set things right? And now over to you all. We look forward to hearing all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for not forgetting Angela. Crisis, controversy, and comeback. Quite a tongue twister. And all of us who are sitting here are all familiar with every word of it. In today's hyper-connected world, a real estate reputation that has been built over many, many years can unravel through a simple thing like a defect at one of the developer or an ESG controversy, or a downturn in the market, right? So the question is not whether your brand will face a crisis. It is when and how do you circumvent that crisis and emerge as a leader. So today we will explore how leading real estate professionals navigate these challenges, turning potential disasters into opportunities for demonstrating resilience, transparency, and renewed stakeholder trust. So I will keep it open to all of you. Any one of you can take it. The youngest one can take it first. First question. What's the most significant... So you decide who is the youngest one here. What's the most significant reputation challenge you have witnessed in real estate, and what made the response effective or ineffective? If you could give me both the ideas.
So what made it?
Effective or ineffective?
All right, I think I'll go first. Nothing to do with
Okay.
nothing to do with age, I guess. First of all, thanks for this opportunity. Look, the very first thing that we need to understand, right? I think when we talk of real estate, whether it's residential, commercial, whatever be it, it's a significant investment, right? I mean, think of numbers. I mean, an average Indian family, perhaps, especially in Mumbai, would shell out anywhere between 14 to 20 times their annual income on any residential project that they're investing into, right? And I mean, again, I'm not discriminating between luxury and non-luxury. I mean, I'm just saying at any level, they're investing that sums of money. And when you do, I think as developer or as somebody who's in the ecosystem, you're duty bound to ensure that you're giving them the best experience, right? And when that doesn't happen, in terms of what you claim and then what you deliver or you don't deliver, I think that's a crisis, right? Some brands understand this better over others because look, at Concept PR, we actually work with a lot of real estate brands. Luxury, premium, uber luxury. I mean, there's so many adjectives that brands are using to define themselves. But across, I think one thing's common, right? Proportionately, people are invested into how and what they want from their investment. And to that point, I think brands that understand this sentiment tend to do far better when it comes to crisis in the way they respond, empathy being one, putting themselves in somebody else's shoes, and therefore, and also allowing somebody like us. I mean, I'm a PR firm. At the end of it, I'm also answerable to my client in terms of what goes, what doesn't. The clients that understand this sentiment tend to give us a lot more freedom to manage it. And when they give us freedom, the outcomes are invariably better, right? From a public relations point of view. So at the end of it, a crisis is there, but I think the brands come out stronger. The media tends to be nicer to us when they do understand that we are being very honest in our communication. But of course, and the converse of it also is true, right? When a brand doesn't give you that freedom to, I think go out and express yourselves in the way it's appeals to the public. There again, I've noticed often that the media, the primary stakeholder being media, because it's a via medium that we're communicating, tend to be a lot more aggressive with us, tend to be a lot more adversarial. So therefore, the kind of content that you see end up coming up in the public forum is very hostile. And then that erodes the public trust in the brand, and therefore, it doesn't really add up to...
Yeah. Hardik, would you want to add?
I think it's not about effective, ineffective. I think it's, to be very fair, it's about perspectives of the brand, which is created much before crisis, right? If it's a legacy brand, it's a larger corporate brand, which is also into real estate, they will be perceived very differently compared to a standalone real estate player in that sense. Also, most of the times, crisis is not something which it appears. It's already happened, a few weeks back, few days back, which is not managed well on ground. And most of us deal with it when it's been amplified by surround sound.
Yeah.
And I think most of us need to, from a communication perspective, I think our role needs to evolve to change, to consult in terms of how to manage it on ground rather than once it's appearing in media or social media nowadays. I generally believe and firmly believe is basically it's what you do is only 10%. 90% is your behavior.
Yeah.
If the real estate brand firm does not have that reputation which is built up earlier, you will face more challenges when it comes to a crisis. And my submission is not everything is also crisis, right? People generally now tend to make smaller things as crisis. Oh, my headline is not right. There's a notice from RERA. There is etc. happening in my organization, which is a crisis. And now, fortunately, unfortunately, everybody in the organization thinks that they know communication. So it's on WhatsApp that, okay, this has happened, 6 o'clock in the morning, fastest fingers first. The first message to CEO is the winner. So I think that's how the organizations are facing challenge much more than actual crisis on ground. So I think that perspective needs to change.
Yeah.
And our role as consultants to large organizations or corporates needs to change in a way that, okay, first understand what's happening on the ground. Are you listening it properly? Are you understanding the consumer sentiments? Because the emotions flow. The customers,
Especially
investors,
during a crisis.
yes,
Yeah.
and the stakeholders are much more than media. And media is the last one who will report, but what's happening before that is something which needs to be managed much better. Yeah.
So I'll take it up from where Hardik just left. The most important part of effectivity of any crisis is time. And like literally time stands for money when it comes to crisis. So the way I see it, your role as an advisor to the CEO or the inner circle of the real estate company plays a great deal of role, when it comes to effectively manage any sort of crisis. So if you're the last person to know that there is a crisis, that already means you are in crisis as an agency. So, if as a PR agency, I think the definition of crisis has changed over these years. And also our roles, our expectation from our roles has changed greatly. So what tells me today is that, as PR communicators, we need to be very linked with our clients to an extent that the communication flow ahead of crisis is seamless. So the way sort of I see it is now you have layers of crisis management, right? Like you have community, you have customer, you have, investors, and then last but not the least is your internal stakeholders, correct? Your own employees. And so there is a varied amount of roles, like, Hardik said, that before it goes to press, there are just so many more layers to manage for that effectivity to come into play. So, and world's becoming smaller. Everybody knows everything.
The fastest finger first.
Right? So everyone knows everything. So you giving a story last to the press is any which way is very ineffective. So the right thing to do would be at this point in time is to understand the effect or the impact of that crisis and then act on it. Initially, we used to just act on it, but as we've sort of matured in our careers and the agencies have sort of taken on the hit of experiences, we've just realized that it's so important to realize who is this crisis hitting, and how is that hit going to impact their business, reputation, and so on and so forth.
Agree with you. What Hardik also mentioned was very important, that not everything is a crisis.
Exactly.
Sometimes we tend to put everything under the straitjacket of this is a crisis, this is not a crisis. Hardik, you wanted to say something before I
Yeah,
move?
sure. I think it's very important to differentiate between issues and crisis in that sense. And like she really mentioned that time is of essence. Now, earlier when we used to have a crisis playbook, we had a term called golden hour. Now it's a golden minute because in 1 minute, everything is there on social media.
Golden second now.
Yeah. So yeah, things are getting difficult for all of us. But I think it's fun to work on those scenarios. And coming back to your point on issues versus crisis, I think we will have to define and maybe educate a larger stakeholder perspective, saying that, okay, this is an issue. Like for example, something which is temporary at a particular location, that's an issue. A crisis is a reputational, question mark on your brand existence itself. Or sometimes the crisis is nothing to do with your brand. It actually has to do with a person in the organization, right? Yeah. If you're having, it's a group, it's a larger group, and the group CEO has been accused of certain things. Your one particular brand, which is in real estate, will have its own bearings in it. So it's nothing. It's becoming much more than the brand when it impacts the larger stakeholders in that sense. So that understanding needs to be very, very clear. So yeah.
But if I may just add.
Yeah.
Look, I think there are a couple of things we need to take a step back on, right? One, is this crisis management or media management? Number one, right? Often clients push you to media management. I personally believe there has to be a lot of internal alignment before you do external amplification. Now, clients, again, look, I'm not pessimistic, all right? I'm just saying out of what I've seen and experienced. Clients want you to actually jump onto external amplification without internal alignment. What I mean by internal alignment, right? And since it's on reputation, two fundamental qualities that would tie you to reputation, right? And reputation is a very funny word. I mean, it goes very slow up, but comes down very fast. So image is something that the perception, right? It's perception, how people perceive you, fundamental to reputation. And what you do as an organization, which is your identity, your performance, your vision, and how a stickler you are to that vision and to that delivery of your performance. Now, what invariably happens is, your identity is on the rocks, but you want a great image to be maintained. And I think that misalignment is what causes all the issues. And therefore, when anything happens in the ecosystem, right, remotely concerning, the brand, the client, we all get very jittery.
Yeah.
And I think, so the answer, the short answer to that long winding response, therefore, is it's important for us to also, therefore, encourage the brands to ensure that the internal alignment is placed on a very high pedestal before we go about trying to, manage externally.
So that brings me to my next question, and it kind of leads into it. How do you distinguish between a temporary PR hiccup and a genuine reputation crisis? You almost made a passing remark on that, and that demands immediate action. How do you distinguish? Because I understand when a crisis is out there in the open, you are running against the time, right? Yeah. Now it's nanoseconds that you have to react. But how do you then distinguish between, let's say it's just a hitch, or maybe it has the seeds of a bigger crisis? How do you do that?
Yeah,
Anyone, the oldest one can take this.
Yeah. Okay, I will take it, okay? I'm not the oldest one, but yeah. I think, give you a simple example, maybe outside real estate. If your food in a flight is not served right, it's a hiccup. But what happened recently to one of the airlines, that's a crisis, right? And that crisis happened because you are not acting on certain things which you were supposed to act a year back.
Yeah.
So, in real estate, crisis happens in cycles, right? It happens during announcement of your project, or delivery of project, after forming an RWA. A lot of these issues, consultants are blamed. A lot of these are repetitive cases, and as you rightly mentioned, it's the biggest investment of life. So these things happen. And I think if you are getting a complaint, okay, there is a leakage or there is certain protest which happens, those are one-offs. Those are crises, needs to be handled in a way it needs to be handled, but those are one-offs. The idea is to how we can prevent the larger reputational issues where you have, if in every crisis will have a pattern which needs to be studied very, very clearly. So you need to have, now everybody would have social listening tools. Again, at Adfactors, we have our own proprietary AI-based listening tool called Kalki. But I think it's very, very important for all of us to understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So the crisis can be prevented. And crisis is something, if I do define crisis in one line, crisis is issues which are ignored earlier. So if it's certain things which is ignored earlier and if you're not acting to it, or choose not to act it because you feel it's not happening, or if you see, oh, it's a small Nagpur post which has been posted, it's not Times of India, for example, then it's a crisis. Because otherwise, you need to start thinking what one post or one simple tweet can lead it to. You need to be prepared for that.
Sure. Angela?
So the way I see it, just to connect with the Gen Zs and the younger audience, we call it creeping crisis or we call it hidden crisis. Usually creeping is the one which is literally brewing for a long period of time and we ignore Nagpur post and then suddenly,
Nagpur becomes Times of India.
Yeah, Nagpur becomes Times of India and there's a great deal of issue. And then there is a hidden crisis that, even the top management wouldn't know that this is coming their way. So the way we see it is, and leave alone, that time scenarios don't matter. That time it's just temperaments that you manage ahead of scenarios, right? And unfortunately, we become media managers. We get onto the job to ensure that, the reputation, ultimately the voice of the press is the voice of, what defines where your reputation lies the next morning. So while I do not disagree that this is the most important thing at that particular point in time to do, but there is a parallel machinery which PR firms like us are trying to sort of follow is, there is a part of us who manages an advisory role and there's a part of us who's parallelly just on the job to achieve that short-term goal because, ultimately the team is under pressure. So, our job as communicators is not only to manage the client's sentiment, but also to ensure that the team who's on the job achieves their goal. So the way the entire crisis communication today is taking a different definition altogether. Obviously the social media becomes a great degree of,
Listening to.
you know, because sometimes the crisis is just brewing, and, you know, while it cannot be reported in the press, but the guy who writes in the press is reporting it on his Twitter handle, just to check what the reaction are, and is this news even confirmed or not. So that's a heads up enough that, you know, either we just latch on to what's going on and start preparing for the worst, or then have a viewpoint which is bold enough to say that, hey, let's, you know, figure it out. You know?
I just have a different perspective in this. I think
Yeah.
what happens in most of the agencies, including ours, certain times gets overwhelmed when it's a media crisis. Or you rightly mentioned it's a media management issue.
Which is rightly so, but hard.
Yeah, but I think as we evolve, as the industry evolves, and I think there needs to take a step back and understand, okay, everything is not meant to be dealt in a media fashion way, right? Media is doing a great job by putting out facts as per their understanding and knowledge, right? It's our job to course correct the fact if the facts are not right. But media, as I earlier said, that it's a last audience when it comes to, it's already reporting what's already happened. Now, we don't get evolved as reputational consultants to most of our clients in a way that, okay, we are dealing only with media and we don't provide them legal advisory, we don't provide them fact-checking perspective, we don't provide them certification, understanding that, okay, certain clients are going and claiming I'm doing green, I'm doing, etc. So those, I think, as the market evolves, I think most of us, at least I know, the large part of industry is getting evolved to have those kind of people in the system. Like we have lawyers, we have ESG experts, we have fact checkers, and I'm sure most of these guys will also have that, because that's the need of the day. It's no longer, oh, I'm going to manage one or two media, right? I mean, yes, media is very critical and very important voice when it comes to the building a reputation. But as I said, client now needs consulting beyond just managing media. Mature clients definitely doesn't get bothered about what's the media is going to report, because end of the day, my decision of buying a home is not by reading a story. Yeah. My decision of buying a home is by whether I like or trust that person or that brand at all. That trust and that brand needs to be very, very clear. And certain things which are wrong, I think agencies need to go out and tell that this is wrong. I think most of us...
Tell the truth, that, you know, this is not happening.
So I will reword it. There is, honesty is definitely required, but what is not required is uncontrolled disclosure.
Yeah.
So you disclose certain things which is required from honesty perspective, but you don't disclose in a way which is not supposed to. And who is disclosing? Who's taking the responsibility? Is the CEO coming out and saying, okay, this is our mistake. This is what we have done. That is needed. You can't have a statement which says XYZ official said, no name, nothing, etc. And who's taking the responsibility? I think that is very, very critical when a reputation is getting built over years.
Again, I think your question was hiccup and a major crisis, right? Look, I'll tell you what, there's no one yardstick to say what's a hiccup and what's a crisis, because every brand, it's contextualized. I mean, it's all context driven. But what I can tell you is, look, anything that doesn't fundamentally affect you, right? It's a hiccup, right? But of course, it's a different matter that I'm so image conscious that a little hiccup feels like a crisis to me, but it is not, right? As long as it doesn't erode the stakeholder trust in me, the investors' trust in what we do. It's not related to my core product, my core offering. It's not necessarily a crisis, all right? I'll give you an example. A very leading developer, one of the largest in the country, has a huge township near Mumbai, right? Now, of course, there was a murder that took place, and this is a real crisis last year. There was a murder that took place, and then the next day's paper was all about that murder that took place. Now, obviously, if you're writing a story as a journalist, you would want to geographically place it, right? So you will say that an XYZ murder took place at an ABC place, right? Now, honestly, that is not a referendum, that's not a commentary on your product, your brand. But then obviously the client does get jittery because your property's name or your society's name is mentioned. But to me, honestly, that's a PR hiccup, because if you don't think of it as a hiccup, you're really underestimating the reader's intelligence. Because do you think I will blame that ABC developer because some murder took place in that place? Right? However, now let's take that same developer. There was a story that somebody punched and the wall broke through. Now that to me is a crisis. Why? Because it fundamentally questions my offering, my building quality or whatever. I mean, of course, like I said, Noam Chomsky has very famously said, a lot of it is manufactured dissent, manufactured views, right? So it can be manufactured in today's day and age, but I'm discounting it. Let's take it at a face value. Somebody punched through the wall and the wall broke through and you actually went into the neighbor's place, right? So that to me is a crisis, because it affects
That's a big crisis to me.
Yeah.
And from what I believe is also the time that all of you have like 20 plus years of experience in this, right? So you know by now that what is a hiccup, it's your gut. You can on the first day say that, look, this is just a hiccup, we will manage. This is going to be a crisis, right? Like Nagpur to Times of India, that is something shifting very quickly, right? So my next question again is, what is the early warning system or monitoring practices that you do? You did mention Kalki, I think. What are some of these that you're implementing, and why has it become so important to have that? Is it because of social media or the speed at which news travel?
No, so today everybody is a journalist, right? Everybody who has a phone is a journalist.
Publisher.
So I think that's where the complexity of the situation is multiplying in that sense. It's no longer, if I have to say how the world is changing, if the Prime Minister has to give an interview, he'll go to a podcaster. He's not going to a media house. So that's how the complex situations are happening. That's how consumption of news is happening. And if we are not listening to what's happening on ground in that sense, on day-to-day basis or even hourly basis or minute by minute, then we are losing a lot of things. We are not prepared for what's going to happen next. And if you are not prepared, we will not be able to face. I think the basic principle of crisis management is preparedness. If you are not prepared, if you are not there understanding and yes, there are a lot of technologies there, but human interventions is not going from a crisis understanding, because end of the day you're playing with emotions. You're playing with people. So having the right set of understanding on analytics perspective, so PR professionals from media managers are now actually become analytics. They are analyzing situation, okay, this is going to happen, now next will this will happen, next will this will happen, and a report is generated and given to the client saying, okay, we think this is going to happen, you should do 10 things. Now obviously certain things cannot be done, but I think that understanding of what could go wrong is primary. And I think when it comes to real estate or any other field, social listening, or in that sense contextual listening, what we call, is common, and I think it's commonly done by every brand, if I understand. To what degree is the question mark, and what they do after that is also a bigger question mark.
Yeah, in fact,
it's a must do now.
Look, I think a lot of tech dependence is there, right? I mean, today you have a lot of AI tools that you look at. I mean, for publicly available, you have something like a Talkwalker, Meltwater. I mean, these are tools that you would use typically to locate conversations. And how it typically happens is, you have an XYZ handle, right, putting out something. Now, a tool like Talkwalker lets you know who's put it out, who all has endorsed it, and where all is it traveling on the globe, right? And you get that virality map. You're able to then zoom in and see who's that person, how many followers. So look, if somebody's put up a grouse, and this is because I'm harking back to how do you identify it, right? So first part A to it is tech. I'm talking about tech right now, which is the tech is throwing the data to you. Now it tells you that there is somebody in New Delhi who's posted a content on your brand, but that person only has 10 followers. All right? Now, to me, probably at that stage, that's not a crisis. That's not even inkling of a crisis. But if it gets picked up by another handle, let's say, which has 100,000 followers, that's a crisis to me. I mean, at least a brewing crisis to me, as Angelica said. So then I am looking at, a number that can potentially damage me. Now, but then comes the human int, right? Which is where you have honed your understanding of the market and what works, what wouldn't. And therefore, you'll put on your thinking hat to say, you know what, 100,000 followers, okay, but not very, maybe tangential to my industry, not very worried. However, let's say it was 50,000 followers with somebody who's really an influential voice in my sector. Then I'll really sit up, take notice, I'll start mapping. So therefore, it's a combination, right? A combination of technology and human int that you hone over the years that will help you distill out a lot of the noise from the potential crises, and therefore it allows you to deploy your resources to managing, quelling, or engaging with that particular crisis point for certain effective intervention, as against spreading yourselves very
You want
thin.
to add something?
Yeah. So, tech is great and all utilization of tools is great, but the way to combat crisis, or how we are seeing it right now, is that we do not ignore any passive voices. Before the passive voice changes into active, one needs to sort of take notice of the surround sound, make a fact check, what's going on, check with the management if there is any action to be, taken, or not only just action, maybe just, give a reaction if you have some, because soon that, and it's really helped us, not ignoring those passive voices and understand if there is a vengeance, if there is a personal agenda, propaganda behind it. And for a very decent client, I mean, it helped us going a great degree of even correcting an AI tool which picked up incorrect words and created a perspective if there was a Google search made. So we actually went on to Google and correcting them just because they had picked up passive voices. So, that's great that we're not relying completely on technology, but ignorance is definitely not bliss, when it comes to crisis.
I totally agree. What I think, one understanding of the situation, be it 10 follower or 100 follower, that 10 guy could have tagged PMO and multiple people, and one of them reacts, there's a bigger crisis.
In
right?
fact, sometimes those 10 followers will actually tag the CM. And
that's very
it's
often.
yeah,
That's
it's very
very
often. So it can actually. So
Very
there are.
often.
It's true. There are two sides to it, right? So one side it says, listen, I'm not a big deal, but I'm marking whoever's the authority. And the second way of looking at it is, please do not take this lightly. And
Exactly.
and it sort of worked. And see, real estate business at large is a risky business. Unless you have a great appetite for risk, you will not be in this business. So, the people as communicators, I mean, we do have a great appetite for risk bearing too. But we've at least, like Hardik said, we are inclining, we are on the road to a stronger, advisory, consultancy, beyond just output process. And people are also realizing that beyond media management, there's a lot more stakeholder management, because ultimately, you may not be speaking to the press, but your stakeholders may be, and that becomes the source of information.
So you have recognized the crisis, you have tools to recognize it. Can you give me an understanding of how do you prioritize communication across your different stakeholders? Is it investor, tenants? Who will be your first point of contact, and how you go beyond that?
So it's not a like standard process. Right? It's who's getting impacted the most is one way of looking at it. Second way of looking, who's going to create the most noise, right? Certain times people choose to remain silent. Now, today's in digital world, silence is no longer neutral. When you're silent and say, oh, no comment or not available for comment, it's assumed that, okay, you are guilty without saying it.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the things change. If it's genuine crisis, a genuine mistake, I think it's good to own up in a way which is more appropriate. Obviously, legal consideration is to take in place. But I think from a stakeholder perspective, for real estate, I think the biggest stakeholder should be your home buyers or consumers. If it's a PE-led organization or have huge investments, they also need to talk about the risk they are going to face and returns, because it's a question mark, right? So these two remains most important. When it comes through communication, as I said earlier, 90% behavior, 10% communication. The communication part, most of us will be taking care of, right? Because, and beyond a point, you can't change what has happened. You may just create a narrative which is around it, or try to soften it, use your friend circles, etc., etc. But I think beyond a point, what has happened has happened. So media becomes an important stakeholder if it's reporting in a way which is completely against what has happened. But otherwise, media, as I said, media is an outcome of what has already happened. So those stakeholders who are impacted and those who are going to make the maximum noise needs to be treated equally.
First.
Yeah.
So if I talk from a framework point of view, right? Typically, I mean, if I'm doing a risk profiling for a client, I would look at, within real estate, I would look at what works, what wouldn't, right? And I give a percentage. Governance in real estate is a significant thing. Yeah. So if I'm doing a risk profiling, I would attribute 30-40% of my effort to governance as an attribute, right? Likewise, I would look at on-time delivery of projects, transparency in my dealings, and therefore the way I'm executing my projects, etc. And you are weighting them, like you're giving them a weighted average. Now what happens is, depending on the crisis, and I know where the crisis impacts the most. If the crisis is of governance nature, then obviously the audience that needs to be addressed as part of that governance then gets addressed. Versus the other. I think I would leave it at that in the interest of time. Yeah.
So just one last question, because we are out of time and it's beaming at me. So what reputation risk do you see emerging in real estate in the next 5 years? And we are talking about a time when you're saying crisis can erupt in nanoseconds and impact anyone and everyone at any time. So what do you think would be some of the bigger crises that you would look at in terms of real estate in next 5 years?
See, I think from a reputation perspective, real estate has always been facing a crisis, which is now more prominent, is overselling and under-delivery.
Yeah.
Right? And now with stringent norms, you can't just say I'm complied with ESG, right? By just planting certain trees or having green pastures or open areas. ESG is now very, very stringent in that sense. It's not enough to have a LEED certification program. It's not just enough to have certain reports which you create every year and say we are doing ESG. I think greenwashing as a subject has really hit real estate, and because end of the day, you are responsible for a lot of carbon emissions when it comes because of construction. And when you are not trying to do it genuinely, but it's only on paper, then it's a bigger challenge. So that crisis is must. Also, a lot of real estate players are always under pressure for sales and delivery. Yeah. So if you see, a lot of churn happens across the board. Those who are owner-driven and those are executive-driven, you will see the difference in the churning of the senior management which happens. That also becomes a reputation crisis. The returns to investors is getting marginalized day by day. If you see all the listed players, most of them are in trouble. So crises of multiple nature, but I think it's just the crises were always there. I think the scrutiny today is much more, and you can't run away from it. You will have to deal with it as a real estate player, and I think somebody needs to really own it up even at the CEO level. So that's how crises have been changing.
So what I'm getting from all of you is crises will always be there. Crisis will always be there. It is how we identify it, how we understand it, and how we turn it around into an opportunity to show value to the stakeholders, which are your promoters, your tenants, and the entire community. Right. With that, I would like to thank all the three of you for this session. And thank you. And sorry we've been over time now. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much. Please give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for adding so many insights to this conversation regarding reputation management. I'll request all of you to remain on stage, please. I'm going to be calling upon stage Mr. Akhil Saraf, founder and CEO, Realty, to please kindly come up on stage and give the token of appreciation to our esteemed speakers over here. A big round of applause once again for Mr. Saraf over here as he makes his way to the stage. Thank you. one group photo together at the end. So much. We'll do a nice group photograph with all of you together, please. Thank you so much. Phenomenal session indeed.